Hi, and welcome back to Coffee Break with Josh. Today we're taking a look at the brand new Google Antigravity. This new IDE promises an agentic first development experience, changing the way that we've developed software probably forever. Now, it looks like initially it's based off of the open source VS Code, much like Klein and Cursor. So I'm excited to jump into this new experience and see if it's actually generating anything novel and unique or a unique workflow about how to approach agentic development. If we go through the development docs and the landing page, it's all focused on a agent first experience, bringing the software development agents from Google's DeepMind labs into the full production workflow for software developers of all skills and all levels. So I think what's neat about this kind of merging from, or developing in agentic first experiences, what I think is unique about this new round of IDEs is that we're really shifting paradigms. For one of the first times that I can remember, we're making moves that had no kind of parallel in the history of software development. And that move is using artificial intelligence to do full stack development. Now, if we go back and we look at the top use cases here, you'll notice that we have a professional use case. I'm not really sure what that is right now, but we'll go and check it out. The front end applications, which all agentic and AI services seem to have started with the front end, doing React, Angular, and JavaScript, full stack JavaScript front ends, which was nice. It got, kind of a look and feel of something decent up and running quickly, but it wasn't really terribly impressive in my opinion because a lot of that work as a software developer, it doesn't take too much time. What does take time is animations, interactions, transitions, and refining those to the point where they're working on every type of device that you are targeting. And that wasn't something that AI first front-end development was doing. So I'm excited to see if that's where we're heading. And then full stack development, which has really kind of suffered, especially within the Google ecosystem here. Things like Firebase Studio and Jules have come onto the scene to kind of shift developer focus away from writing code and using AI first generation tools. So I don't think that we are going to see something terribly mind-blowing, but I do think we're going to see the next evolution of where the development experience is heading. So let's go in, let's check out this professional use case first. And it looks like, it's kind of giving us the things that we would expect, right? It's an AI-powered editor. Most of us are using AI-powered editors already. If you're not, you might be using a text editor and you're stuck in 1960. But many of us are also using agents, whether it's within an ecosystem like Cursor or GitHub. Those agentic development tools have, over the last 6 months, exploded, and we're seeing very competent agentic development tools from a plethora of different companies, including Google, come to the forefront right now. And one of the biggest things that a professional developer is going to need, and really I think this is for every developer, is that the code base needs contextual understanding. We need to be able to rely on our AI assistants to have an accurate and robust and up-to-date view of our code base so that we're not running into problems every time we turn around. So let's see what else that they kind of put in the professional. We'll notice that they have a bunch of videos, which we're not going to look at, but the relevant stories are pretty interesting, especially the going from 90 to 100%, where we're looking at agentic development tasks that have typically taken us, 3/4 of the way, maybe 90% of the way, like they're saying. I think that's probably a stretch. But that last mile of the road has been a difficult journey for AI to finish up. And now as we move to autonomous agentic tasking, where the AI agent is running all these software development processes externally, either on a remote server or in the background processes on our local machine, we're seeing that we don't really want to be bothered with going back into the code base, reviewing hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of lines of code just to make it that extra 10% ready for production. And so Google in Antigravity is saying that, hey, listen, this is the next evolution. We are going to do something that's actually special here. We're going to take it the last mile. And so you'll be able to turn ideas into apps with maybe just a description and some guidance. I think that that's pretty exciting. I don't think anybody else has made that claim as Google has. So I'm excited to see if they back it up. Now, I've already went and downloaded this app, and it is available for Windows, Linux, and I believe Mac. But if you come onto the Anti-Gravity home screen, you'll see download for Windows, or download for Mac, or download for Linux. I already installed it on my Linux machine last night and had it up and running, so I'm a little bit into it, but this is really my first look into the anti-gravity product that I'm doing along with you. So let's go ahead and take a look at after it installs. We have this very simple splash screen, and let's just go to next. And so we can choose our setup flow. We can import settings from VS Code. Like I said, I feel like this is very much a VS Code clone, or a fork more appropriately from the open source Microsoft Visual Studio Code repository, which has been the basis for, I think, every IDE that I've seen out there so far, whether it's Cursor, Klein, or the half dozen others that have popped up, because Visual Studio Code is open source. And recently this year, Microsoft also open sourced the GitHub Copilot extension. So there's a lot of tools out there and a lot of pre-done work from the big player like Microsoft that shows these companies how to develop this first, without going and reinventing the whole stack. So let's not import from VS Code. Let's just go and start fresh. And I'm a dark mode guy, so I am working at night and in early mornings most of the time on code. So I'm leaving my as dark. Now here is probably the first thing that tells me that this is not Visual Studio Code, right? I'm coming in and I'm setting up, and now my third question in is, how do you want to use the anti-gravity agent? Well, personally, I don't even know what the anti-gravity agent is yet, so I'm probably just going to stick with the recommended, but let's see what they have here. If we choose agent-driven development, we have a terminal execution policy of turbo, auto, or off available, and a review policy. I'm guessing that's the human in the loop review policy for me to approve changes that it's doing to the code bases. And it can be always proceed, agent decides, or request review. Well, you know what? I'm not going to hand the keys off to the Terminator yet, so I am going to always select request review. And we can see that once I change that, it jumped me down to custom configuration, which means that these options are just changing the terminal execution policy and the review policy, and it doesn't look like it's actually doing anything else but changing these couple of settings and then giving them some vocabulary. So I'm going to choose this one, and auto and agent decides. Let's let's leave it there. I'm hesitant to let the agent decide anything nowadays without evaluating it first. So I would definitely want to set this on request review when I was going into a repository or making a branch that I really wanted to work on. We can configure the editor with key bindings. If you configure your key bindings like Vim, if you use the Vim editor, and if you're in a hardcore software development environment like myself, most of the time I'm running on the server using Vim, so those shortcut keys are already locked in for my editor. I'm just going to leave that at normal for now. And it says extensions, install popular language extensions. And there are required for some agent features. Other extensions can be found on the marketplace in the editor. Again, this marketplace is feeling like it sounds like it's the VS Code extension marketplace. And if we jump into the app, I think that's what we'll see. So we also have a command line tool to open anti-gravity with AGY keyword. Okay, that's something I didn't see in the documentation or in the promotional blog post yet. So I'm interested to see what that command line tool is doing. I assume that it's going to integrate things like the gcloud CLI and the Gemini CLI so that the editor can work alongside and through those tools. So let's go into the next one. And here we're finally into signing in. Notice that we did all this without actually signing into our account. I am going to do this, and you'll see that I have to choose an account for my Google Antigravity. And my email, which everybody already knows. I'm not giving away the the store there, and it looks like we've logged in. And now we're agreeing to terms of use, and I am agreed to allow Google to collect my blood, sweat, and tears, possibly my DNA, my retinal scans, and everything else that has ever identified me. Now, it doesn't actually say that, but these terms of use things can be quite discouraging for people like myself who have security considerations with clients, and I have content uh, agreements with clients where I can't share certain types of code bases with AI agents that are non-local. And even actually, I have a couple covenants that I can't serve them, even produce code from things like DeepSeek or Kimi K2. Um, and typically we'll find that in, kind of highly secure development environments, typically within, for myself, within the US education system, but also within national security and corporate security. So let's just go ahead and say, yes, we do agree to that and see where we are. We have this little selecting a model pop up and it looks like, hey, listen, we can select Gemini. Let's dismiss this. We can select Gemini Pro High and Gemini Pro Low, which is interesting because I haven't seen Pro High or Pro Low in any other um, agent panel before, and including VS Code's agent panel. So let's just go flip open VS Code. So this is VS Code, and you can see if I come down here, I have Gemini 3 Pro within GitHub's Copilot available because they jump on these things the same day nowadays. But I have no mention of Gemini 3 Pro High or Pro Low. Maybe that's a Nano. I'm not really sure what's going on there. So I'm interested to jump in and see what the difference is going to be. So let's see what else we have. We have basically conversation modes, and those are going to be equivalent to the agent modes in VS Code. Again, this UI is looking very similar to VS Code. We can see the chat agent interface on the right-hand side, but we also have a very VS Code-like bar over here. In fact, this is all the same as VS Code on the Explorer. The search looks the same. Git control looks the same. Debugging looks the same. Remote Explorer looks the same. And the Antigravity uses OpenVSX, which is the Visual Studio Code marketplace. So we have all the extensions that you would be getting in Visual Studio Code available in this new Antigravity IDE. So let's see what else we can do with the agent. Looks like we can attach images, we can mention something, probably other agents, and we can create workflows, which is pretty neat. I'm not familiar with workflows yet, so we'll take a look at that. All right, so now I am going to go over to my GitHub account and find a repository to use in this demo real quick. Okay, in that little break that I just took, I installed the GitHub pull request extensions. We just wanted to make sure that I could create a pull request for the repository we're going to work on. And in the meantime, we have noticed, I guess I noticed, that there is no MCP tools over here like I have in my GitHub Copilot. If we want to access the tools, we have to go up to this, or MCP servers, I mean, we have to go up to the menu in the top right here and go to MPC servers, where we have this kind of a short list of MPC servers, MCP. I'm not sure why the list is so small, but let's go ahead and use Firebase. We're going to install Firebase MCP. We're going to install the Git MCP, the GitHub one. We're going to need a personal access token for that. So let me go and do that. I'll be right back. All right, well, I probably turned this on too early because my key is still visible in there. I'll have to go and wipe that out. But I put a personal access token in there. I used a classic access token, so let's see if that's the right one. Looks like we might have froze a little bit, so let me pause and come back here. Okay, I just restarted the Antigravity app because it got hung up there a little bit. Expect that. This is in a preview product, so this isn't probably the production foolproof version. And what I did is I installed the Firebase CLI, and it looks like we have all the Firebase tools here. Now the Manage MCP servers is right up here on the corner. So if we remember, we go up here to MPC servers, and then Manage MCP servers. It was a tongue twister, huh? Um, Looks like we have 49 tools, and they're all enabled right now, which is fine right now. We're not going to leave them all enabled. But now I have a GitHub one too, and it looks like it had an error initializing. So I have added a GitHub personal access token, and it says that it has saved. Okay, well, you know what? This might be the wrong access token. So what I did here is I created a legacy personal access token, and that looks like it might not be the right one. So I went ahead and deleted that. I'm going to go ahead and let me show you this. So in the github.com/settings/tokens, you can generate GitHub apps, OAuth apps, personal access tokens. And I tried the classic token, but that was the wrong one, it looks like. And let's generate a new token for here. And this is going to be anti-gravity. I am no expiration. I'm going to give it access to all my repositories because most of my repositories are private. And it says that okay, so let's go ahead and use actions, metadata, pull requests. I'm going to fast forward through this so you don't have to watch me do it, but let's see what we get to it at the end. Okay, basically, I gave it almost all privileges, read only right now. So let's go ahead and make sure it has write actions to some of these things it's going to need to write as well. All right, so now I just gave everything read and write. Let's generate this token. Right, so I've now generated this crazy ass long token. And I am going to put it back here and click save. Looks like it did something. I'm sure it did anything actually. Well, still isn't in Visual Studio Code. Okay, so when I clicked on create a GitHub personal access token, it took me to the fine grain access token, which I just created, right, and installed on there. And it looks like it still isn't spinning up. Let's see. No, it still does not configured. So let's uninstall that one. Let's refresh, move this out. Let's try again. So, I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. I think that this GitHub extension is just not working, which is unfortunate, but it's not the end of the day. Firebase extension is in there, and that is working. Firebase is something we're going to use a lot. Well, I use a lot. I don't know if you are. Um, what else could we add here? We have a Notion. I don't use Notion, and it has a Perplexity ask. I guess that's neat. The Sonar API to provide real-time web-wide research capabilities. That's an interesting one to add here. So I'll probably add this later. I'm not going to do it right now. Pinecone could be useful. Supabase, very popular right now. Supabase, if you're running Postgres backends and AI native apps, Supabase has been the go-to for a lot of developers nowadays. I have mixed feelings about that as well as Cursor. I feel like they're going to be acquisition targets for Google or Microsoft sometime soon. Um, what else do we have? We have Atlassian, so we can use Jira and other tools from them. We have a sequential thinking. So I've used sequential thinking in my other GitHub Copilot, and I like how it works. So let's go ahead and install sequential thinking. Okay, no configuration. I love no configurations. Looks like we have that. And I'm going to uninstall this GitHub again because we couldn't get it working. And all right, so I'm just going to go ahead with those two now. We can manually install MCP servers as well, and Docker has an MCP hub. So just a reminder, the Docker MCP hub has tons of MCPs. Well, I wouldn't say tons, but it has a lot of popular ones by major providers wrapped up in Docker images that all you do is download Docker Desktop to get started and turn it on with the MCP server running, and you just add your configuration file in the instructions onto Antigravity, and you'll be all set. I do run the GitHub. I do have GitHub running in a Docker image right now for my VS Code. So if all else fails and I need it for this, then I'll come and implement MCP using the Docker MCP catalog. All right, so it looks like we're all set to do something, and that's something, as we go back to the anti-gravity agent. Well, let's take a look at something that I built recently using Firebase Studio, and that is Google's other IDE development tool. And Firebase Studio, let's just take a look at it. This is Firebase Studio. It is a kind of a very similar type of environment, only it's all web-based. There is a web app that you can download and install here. but the difference is that this is mainly driven for in-browser development. And there's some hangups with in-browser development, and I have had limited luck with Firebase Studio, principally because I expect Firebase Studio to do everything in Firebase really, really well. It should know authentication, how to configure all the different options. It should know when to use different types of storage and different types of schemas. There's NoSQL and there's the SQL type storage. There's different types of connectors in the extension marketplace that you can use. But I haven't gotten any of that feedback with Firebase Studio. So using Firebase Studio has been a bit frustrating for me. In fact, I went out this week and created this swap style app, which we see right here. And swap style is basically, you'll see notice the thing with Firebase Studio, right? It's setting up the workspace and the environment and all the development tools inside the browser. So it's a lot like the GitHub code. It's a lot like GitHub code spaces where it spins up right in the developer environment, right in the browser, and you're ready to go. Personally, I really like that as long as you have all your tooling set and you know what you're doing for small, simple, fast punch projects where you might be developing an add-on or something that's relatively simple. This has been my go-to kind of workflow, is to spin up a code space environment, share that environment with another developer or end user, and just go through the workflow that way, and then shut everything down when I'm done. So I don't have to worry about it. Didn't change any of my configuration settings on my desktop or my laptops or my tablets, and all ready to get started with my next project. Where in larger projects, I obviously work within my code base on my local computer. Um, it should be noticed that you're working with the code base in the local computer. The agent runs in a local computer too, but those API calls to the LLM still occur over the network. So you don't have any real isolated environment where you're working with the agents unless you're using something like Cline, which automatically uses something like Open Router to use local LLMs, but they are not nearly as powerful as the cloud-based trillion parameter models that are the current SOTAs or state of the art. So we see this app is spinning up. The development environment's a little bit different in Firebase Studio than we're going to see in Antigravity. And basically you have this interactive preview browser that's spinning up, and we have the chat interface over here on the right side. And then we can switch to code over here so that we can work with the code in a very similar editor than we work with VS Code, or in this case, Antigravity, which looks like, very much looks like this Firebase Studio, right? So the menus look very similar. The extension marketplace is the same. Git control, source control is the same. The big difference being that we have a little Gemini show code actions thing over here. We have Gemini in the side panel or here. And we have the preview pane here. So this Firebase Studio looks a lot like our new Antigravity app. However, it is inherently different, right? It's running directly in the browser all the time, except for when I download the web app, which is just another browser-based session. And so as it's spinning up right now, we notice it's actually taking quite a bit of time. It's a very simple app that uses Gemini. And it looks like we got a conversation history back here. Okay, so it's loaded up all that good stuff. It looks like it's not going to load the preview. And there's no log, so I don't know why. But nonetheless, let me show you what this app actually does. And if we go over to joshuaberkowitz.us and to my apparel store, you'll see that all these apparel items, they don't have people in them. Well, that's pretty much on purpose. Let's go into one of these designs and say, okay, well, let's pick this hoodie right here. Okay, so this hoodie is on this model here, but it'd be great if you could virtually try it on, and that's what Swap Style does. It is the add-on that I'm using here, so that when I click it, I go into Swap Style app, and you'll see that Swap Style Joshua Berkowitz, and there is a garment URL that is passed for this image of the garment, which is used to swap the style on a picture that I have. So let's go ahead and Let's use this picture here of this girl from a recent promotional program and just hit generate. And so this very simple app, it uses no authentication. It uses a parameter from the URL called garment URL, not a post parameter. So the setup is very simple. It's meant to be very easy to use for people and very easy to accommodate with integrating into something like WordPress or Magento, or in this case, Odoo. It's very easy to do. So now we get something where we can easily swap the style on there. You'll notice that the crop is a little bit different, but nonetheless is pretty accurate in its usage right there. And so this app is mainly about handling image intake and processing using Gemini's Nano Banana model. So we can go and we look at the file structure here. It's relatively simple. We have a Next.js app, and it's running on Firebase hosting, and it's using Firebase functions. So in here, we have a virtual try-on flow. Let's just look at that. You'll see that we're calling in GenKit. So we're using the AI GenKit to run this photo swap. And basically, we have a user photo, well, there's the schema for the photo intake and photo output. So I think if we scroll down here, you can see it's very simple. And then we have this prompt, which basically takes care of the app for us. Now, let's go ahead and close this out and go back into Antigravity. And so this would be nice to allow people to save their images, right? So let's go ahead and all right, I got my swap style URL from my GitHub repository, and now I'm going to clone it and then create a pull request for a branch on this. So basically what this is my swap style studio repository. And I just need to select my location. Okay, we're going to open it. Yes, I trust it. All right, looks like we have our repository up and running inside of the Explorer. But one thing I want to do is create a pull request and name the branch. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to add the ability for the user to select a background. And we're going to say, for the sake of simplicity, 3 different background styles, one studio background and one lifestyle background and one contemporary office background. And so let's create a pull request and name the branch. Let's say add background toggle. Actually, let's add background swap feature. So let's see if it does this first of all. All right, so I was able to approve these as they come through the terminal or through the interface running through the terminal. If you notice down here, we have this little terminal. Will tell us which files are being worked on. And we should go up here and start a new terminal as well. Let's look. All right, check out branch. That looks right. And now we'll do a status check. And we switched to the new branch. All right, so that worked out well. And I'm just going to go back in here in my terminal. Oops. Terminal. I'm in the studio folder, which is where my repository is. And I'm just going to go status. Okay, so we're on branch, add background swap feature. Great. And it looks like it wants to push the origin. I'm going to let it do that as well. I don't see why it had to do that. Not really sure. All right, still working. Do a diddy diddy dum diddy do. Well, it looks like we got our repository cloned, our branch created, and the branch updated. And looks like it's looking through Git services. So I think the unique thing here is, or maybe the little special thing here is that it's using a terminal to run all the Git commands. So I don't actually need the MCP server as long as I'm logged into my GitHub repository account and it's authorized through the terminal. We should be free to work with the Git commands in the agent terminal. So I think that that's a good feature. Looks like we can agent terminated due to error. You can prompt the model to try again or start a new conversation if the error persists. Okay, let's agent execution terminated due to model provider overload. Please try again later. Okay, so that is probably just happening because the new Gemini Pro 3 is very popular and it's the first day it's out. So we're trying to use it on 3 Pro High. Probably was not necessary for checking out a branch. But nonetheless, it did work. It got us through there, and I think we can go ahead and mark that as good, even though it quit at the end there. So, okay, we have our branch, we got our source folder, we got our flows, we got our GenKit service there. We're using Gemini 2.5 Flash. So, all right, let's ask the agent to do something that it needs to plan to do, right? So in our app, build out the ability for the user to swap background. All right, so we want them to swap out background images provided with 3 backgrounds in the URLs below. So I'm just going to go out, I'm going to find 3 background images to use. They're going to be square aspect ratios because Gemini 2.5 Flash is generating a 1-to-1 aspect ratio image. That's just how we have it set up. Obviously, you can set it up however you want with every aspect ratio that are supported by the model. But we're going to do this right now. So I'm going to take a quick break, go find those images, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I just headed over to Gemini real quick and generated 3 different background images. What's nice about using Gemini is that they're all square 1:1 ratio already. I don't have to resize them. 2 megabyte images, so they should be fine. So I just went over there, did that, and then uploaded them to my website so that I could use them as URLs. Those URLs will persist, so I don't need to upload them to any storage container. So we should make a note of that to the AI. You can use the URLs below without uploading the images to any storage. So I'm just telling it that I want our app to build out the ability for the user to swap the background images provided in the 3 background URLs below. Okay, so I clean up the English a little bit. Our app build out the ability for the user to swap the background images provided in the 3 background URLs below. And the user should be able to select, not elect, background to use before and after generating the image to change the background. You can, double period there. You can use the URLs below without uploading images to any storage or hosting provider. This should allow it to do this without having to spin up any Firebase services. And so let's go and make a note that when services are needed, use Firebase. Just going to make a note that she used Firebase, and the tools are already, MCP server's already installed, so it should be able to spin that up. I should have Firebase tools. Uh, So I'm just going to install Firebase tools in my machine. Doesn't look like I have it in this instance, which I find hard to believe, but I probably should have run the Node version to see which version of Node I'm using at the. So anyway, we're just going to let that run. Looks like it already installed. It's doing something. Not sure why it's not responding now. I'm going to stop that. And I am going to say Firebase login. So I'm actually not sure what's happening right now with this because Firebase should be able to log in very easily. So I am going to cancel that out, Control C. I want to make sure I can come back and run this, and I'm just going to restart the Antigravity app. All right, so we're back in our terminal session, we're back in our folder session, and our agent is spun back up. I'm going to paste this back over here. Let's see if we can log into Firebase yet. Well, I'm not sure what's going on here, so I'm just going to ignore it and probably cut this part out of the video, but we're going to move on to seeing how the development agent handles this request. So let's take a look at the repository and see if we have anything set up in here. You'll notice that we have some files like a blueprint. So this blueprint was made by the Firebase Studio, and it took my requirements when I spun up the app and created that blueprint. It also created the README, which has thoroughly covered what happens in the app. So we'll probably need to update the documentation as this rolls on. Okay, so it looks like we got back an implementation plan. Let me close out these other windows. All right, so we got two things. We got an implementation plan and a task, add background swap features. So looks like we have the ability to review and proceed, which is great. Very much like the sub-agent workflow I'm using in VS Code, which uses an orchestrator and an approval process for sub-agents. So it's telling me it's going to update the virtual trial and input schema to include the optional background photo data URI. That sounds right. It's going to update the prompt generation logic if background is provided, add it to the prompt media array. Okay. Just remember that the Gemini API does take an array of reference images that inside its initial request, so there isn't multiple requests that need to go out to the model, so that is pretty convenient. One of my favorite features of the Gemini models actually is that context array that you can support requests with. And it's going to modify our server actions, which is our Firebase function, and it's going to update virtual try-on image to accept an optional background data URI. That looks right. Pass this argument to virtual try-on function. I haven't reviewed that yet. Pretty sure that's right. Okay, it's going to add sections. Okay, it's outlining it should be available. The ability to swap the background should be available after generation to allow regeneration with a different background. And it's going to handle the click. Okay, no existing automated test for UI are found or allow manual verification. So let's add some automated test in here. So this is nice, right? I'm just selecting and then commenting like I would on a Word doc or a Google Doc. That's pretty useful. One of the features that I think I'll like about this. And when we run this preview, you'll see that we can annotate directly on the preview from the web browser, which is pretty cool. So you can say change the color of a button, you can say move this button or take this out or whatever you might want to do, instead of having to rely on your description of where it is on that page. Okay, so manual verification gives us this runaround. Okay. Now remember, there is no authentication in this app and there is no storage, so there's no storage credentials, there's no API calls that need to be correlated or secured for that. It's just the API making the request to the Firebase function, which houses the GenAI kit and the GenAI kit and the environment variables for our API keys. So those are server backed. It is important to note when you're going through this development process, if you don't specify that those API keys should be encrypted and only used for server-server communication, then there are a lot of services that will try to implement that in the browser without securing the API key. And it is something that is a pet peeve of mine, and you should definitely be aware of when you're developing quick apps, or any app for that matter. There are plenty of services to encrypt API keys either on the server or through a key management service like Google's Key Management. All right, so let's go ahead and see. It's read what it said down here. Okay, it's created an implementation plan and it has done that. We have opened that. We see tasks on here. Explore code base, create implementation plan, implement the background UI, blah, 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 and then verify a feature at the end. Okay, so that sounds good. So let's just continue with implementation. So it'll be interesting to see what it actually comes up with. I noticed in Firebase Studio that I have to be more specific and guide it more often than I do have to do in my cursor or in GitHub Copilot. Copilot for me is my everyday workhorse, so it's set up pretty well. I normally instantiate the repositories with GitHub instructions, agents MD, and any folder-specific instructions with markdown files in there. So this repository in and of itself is rather simple. It doesn't contain any GitHub Copilot instructions, doesn't contain any agents MD files, it does contain a blueprint, which is useful, and more importantly, it has a comprehensive README, which was also designed by Firebase Studio. So as we see, this has gotten an execution error, and it terminated agent execution terminated to model provider overload. Please try again later. Okay, so we want to go ahead and say that that wasn't great. All right, we have 2 files that were generated. We have 0 background changes and inferior changes. Okay, let's try this again. All right, so just proceed with the implementation plan. And like I said, we're using Google's 3 Pro on high during the first day of its release. It's a very high demand product, and so we might run into issues. In addition, we're looking at Antigravity, which is a beta preview product, so we do know that we should expect bugs or some issues. So let's see, it is updating progress, it analyzed the task, it edited the task, doesn't look like it though. And they updated the implementation plan. Not sure what was updated on here. All right, I've updated the implementation plan to audit. Please review the changes. All right, that looks good. Proceed. Okay, it's begin implementing now. It's refining the workflow, and I'm going to let it do its thing, and we'll come back after all the thought process has completed. All right, and it's done. It's finalized the document, it's added some tests, it validated the tests, and it created a walkthrough MD file, which we'll look through now. So the walkthrough background swap feature says I've implemented the background swap feature, allowing users to select a background for their virtual try-on image. It gives me a list of the changes that are made and the files that it changed. What kind of test packages it added. And it uses vytest and .env. And created a unit test to verify the background image is correctly added to the prompt. Okay. And then it gave me test. Okay, so now at the bottom, we can see 5 files changed. And if we go in here, we'll see the list of the changed files. And if we go over here, we see 3 artifacts that were created, an implementation plan, a task list, and a walkthrough MD. I'm going to accept all these changes. And I'm going to go back to my README. I'm going to run my npm install. All right, I'm going to need a Google Gen AI API key in my local env file to test this. So do I have a local env file? It doesn't look like it, right? Okay. No, it doesn't look like I have that. So let's go ahead and create a .env.local. And inside there, we need this key. And I'm just going to head over to AI Studio and get myself a test key. I'm even going to show you what the test key looks like because I will be deleting it instantly. Okay, so this is test key. Okay, now I have that. So I can save that. Back over here. So I'm going to spin up the development environment and see if we can test this locally. I still need to figure out where Firebase Tools is installed so that we can deploy this. And it seems like we're having some trouble with the latency on the terminal. So that might be an issue. I'm not really sure. We'll have to check the issue logs, see if that came up with anybody else. All right, so we have a local host and we have a network. Let's go ahead and spin this up, see if it spins up. All right, so we can see that there is an application error and the call stack. Let's see, let's copy this. A select item must have a value prop that is not an empty string. This is because select value could be an empty string. To clear the selection, show a placeholder. Uh, hmm, okay, so let's just go ahead and see what this looks like. Mm, okay, so we have a call stack here that's going to be useful. I'm going to copy this whole thing, and I am going to put this through. So I'm just going to copy paste the error is what I do with my GitHub Copilot, and it usually does a great job at decompiling, decompressing that error message and attempting to fix it. So let's see what it does here. I am fixing this by changing the value to none and updating the logic to handle it. Okay. Let's save these. I have fixed the runtime error. The no background option now uses a value of none instead of an empty string. Okay, so let's just try this again. Okay, so this keeps giving me like these crazy terminal hints, and I am not a terminal hint fan most of the time because it's just obstructive and it's not necessary in most of the cases that I work with. So let's go ahead and, oh, that didn't work either. Okay, but we can check out that our errors are gone. We don't have an image here. Okay, so let's go ahead, let's go over to my website. Go over to my shop and we'll get an image to try on from one of these. So I'm just going to copy this image address and put it here. Okay, so you see that I have this image here now that that's the one we're going to switch to. And then we have a optional background selection. So we can select, let's select studio. And let's use my picture of myself here. And our goal is that it's going to swap the image of the t-shirt with the t-shirt on my profile picture, and it's going to put in the new background. So let's see if it does that. And I'm going to switch back to here. It looks like we got the post request. And there we go. So I mean, maybe it's not the best picture to use and the best background to use, but it did the job the first time and it did it well, right? So let's go ahead and select a different background and generate again. Let's see what happens. So I think that if I go in and I inspect a network, what's happening here is it's not taking the previously generated image and then trying to generate a new one with a different background. It's going to take the garment URL, the profile picture, and the background image, and then just make a new request. So I don't anticipate that there's anything kind of sophisticated going on here. This is the simplest app that I've developed in a very long time, and it was only so that I could prototype in Firebase Studio. So take it for a grain of salt, but it did work. It worked on the first shot, and there wasn't any, well, there was one issue that arose, right? But it was solved almost instantly. So that's great. Now, instead of drop downs for the images there, so instead of having a drop down here and selecting one of these three, let's use thumbnail images of the backgrounds. So let's say let's Right, so I'm just telling it that instead of using that drop down, which it put it in a convenient location along with the flow of the app. But I don't really like that because it doesn't tell you what the background is. You have to go in there and experiment with it or have some other page that shows you what they are or something. That seems like it's not very user friendly. So we're just going to use thumbnails along the bottom and replace that drop down. So it looks like it did that already. No, it's still generating. Okay. Notify user to verify the thumbnail. I've refactored the background and okay, so it looks like it recompiled. Let's go ahead and see. Nope, looks like we have an issue. Let's just copy and paste this in there again. So this issue is the invalid source prop for the background image. Host name is not configured under images in your next config. Okay, so this is just the Next.js configuration option. I could have just switched in there, swapped in there and done this. It should have been a very simple quick fix. So again, we ran into a runtime error because it looks like Google 3 Pro High is overloading the servers. It's very likely that Google's got some melting GPU cards back there right now. I know when OpenAI came out with ChatGPT 5, they were melting CPU or GPUs in the data center like crazy with that GPT image 1. That really put them into overdrive. All right, so it edited that. It should have recompiled. And there we are again. Okay, so let's go back and use our image address again. Okay, and instead of that dropdown, now I have these beautiful little background images to use. So I can go ahead and let's use this image. And let's say we want to put her in this background and generate this. Let's see what happens. Well, it was a unique take on it, right? So it wanted to show the apparel item, but what it didn't do was swap the background. So let's go ahead and look at our console and see if we have any errors that popped up on there. No, that doesn't seem to be any errors. So let's try selecting a different background and generate it again. Okay, so that time it did do it, swap the background correctly. We have, and look, the edges are very nice. It's just a very nice way of doing it. It's better than Photoshop is ever going to be because I can't get the hair detail around the edges like that. And somehow that is able to preserve it like exceptionally well. And it got the size, relative size right. It left her jacket on there, which I think is an interesting change, huh? And it allowed us to do that just from selecting these. So that was all I really wanted to do in this feature enhancement. I am actually not going to deploy this because I want to refine it further before I let people start using it. And it seems to make the app a little bit more complicated, which I'm really trying not to do. So I think our first use case of Google's new anti-gravity went really well. It definitely went better than the Firebase Studio release. And it looks like this could be a powerful way of developing my next app. So I certainly will be using it to see more about it. But there are a ton of other features that we haven't gotten to in this video. So in the next video, we'll look at things like annotations on live web previews, automated spin up and testing, and a more sophisticated app using either Supabase or Firebase services. So I'm Josh. This is Coffee Break, and no, I'm Josh. This is Coffee Break. Until next time, I'll see you. Oh, I don't like that. I'm Josh, and this has been a Coffee Break with Josh. Until next time, enjoy your coding. Well, thank you for visiting. No. Well, thank you for coming by. This has been Coffee Break with Josh, another dev tutorial and exploring new anti-gravity from Google's development team. So until next time, I'll see you later. Nope, I don't like that one either. Well, thank you for joining me on this excursion through the new anti-gravity IDE from Google. And until next time, this has been Coffee Break with Josh.